Hey everyone, my name is Owen, and welcome to this little cue breakdown of my cue sacrifice that I modify a bit for this little plugin demonstration by Noise Engineering. Are you an orchestral composer that are afraid to use synths but still wants your music to sound cool? This video is for you. This cue right here is mainly composed using acoustic instrument in mind, but with a little bit of audio effects, you can transform some of the sounds to be more synth-like and really complement that orchestral texture. So without further ado, let's just have a listen on this little cue. One of the first things that I'm pretty sure most of you notice, it's something called the delay, or maybe a lot of people call them echo. And in the natural world, it usually happens when you have a sound source, let's say a clap, and then it travels far away in the air, and then it just happened to hit a wall, and then the sound comes back to you as a delay. So that's basically what the plugin does. In this case, the plugin is Noise Engineering Imitor. What's really cool about this plugin is that it does things that are beyond what's possible in the physical realm. Let's just hear one of our first examples here. Let's just hear the delay on itself now to really hear what's going on. So what's happening right now is we're having the shimmer all the way to 100. And what the shimmer does is like a pitch shift in order to make the delays have more of a interesting sound. Now, let's try hearing the same part with that delay. And now with the delay. How big of a difference? But personally for me, I think the most cool use case is when the vocals eventually got really big, and now the delay is basically supporting the vocals a lot. So now let's hear it in solo.
Yeah.
And just for comparison, I'm going to bypass this plugin right now. Now let's hear it in context with the delay. Now without the delay. So before we just saw the delay being used in a, I would say, normal way. Now we get into the more experimental way. And that's how I use the delay in the very first part, where there is this little pad over here. Let's now bypass the plugin. And a width. So this one is more of a subtle effect. I have a lot of taps, and what this taps is doing is basically having a lot more delay, and especially because there's not much transient here, the patch just becomes richer. And what's happening here, you see that it basically moves kind of left to right. It's basically modulating the time and also the pitch. So we can actually make the modulation a little faster, and you can hear the effect that it has on the audio. Now it wobbles a lot, right? But I like keeping it really slow and subtle. And this micro pitch in variation creates a more synth-like. Like a lot of people in synth world might use detuning. I think this achieves a similar effect. And especially when you're using this kind of more orchestral patch with the plugin, like this sounds orchestral, and then suddenly it has that synth edge to it, which I honestly really like. Now let's hear it in context. Let's hear it with Imitor first. And now let's hear it without. It's really subtle difference, but I think it's a big difference because you're going from this organic sound into this really synthy sound, but it's somewhere in the middle. It's like the uncanny valley, which is the emotion that I want to really get in the opening. Now we're ready to move on to the next plugin. The next plugin is Desmodus. And most people are probably familiar with reverb. Reverb basically works when you have an object inside a room and that sound propagates, and then the sound bounces inside the room until it reaches you back again as a tail. And I think what's really cool about this plugin, you can make the reverb tail really long in a ways that it's not possible in the physical world. Let's just hear this little string quartet pulses over here. Let's hear it without the effects first. So you got this build up with the string quartet, which is cool. But what I did after that is I added FX modulator, which just modulates the signal to make a little bit of a pulse. And then I think like it's a little too plucky. So I basically get rid of that edge by giving it a really, really long and lush reverb. And I think it's such a nice sound. It just rounds the tone. And especially in context, let's hear it. And you hear that tail. You hear it dying out, and now it's done. I personally think it's really beautiful. And that patch from before actually leads us really nicely to this little other thing that I did, which is another plug. Let's hear it first. So same concept as before. We are using the FX modulator as a pulse. So let's hear the original signal. It's basically a pad. It's an orchestral pad. But you put FX modulator and another delay plugin. And here actually, we're just hearing the delay. We're not hearing the dry signal. This is the dry signal. And this is the wet signal. And I think it's really cool. Like we have a few effects here. We have the low frequency oscillator modulating these parameters, which create this really interesting sound. And let's hear it in context. But before we hear it in the full context, let's hear how it transitioned from that string quartet pulse into this little pulse that we have. So we're having a dotted 8th note and a 16th note. And I think that's really cool because now if we listen to it in context, you start to get it. So you're basically transitioning from that dotted 8th note to this 16 note pulse, basically going from one section to the other, which I really like. We're already moving on to our next plugin, which is this Polydactyl. So Polydactyl is basically a multi-band processor. So what a multi-band is you have multiple bands of frequency, and then you can actually manipulate the effects over here. So what I'm doing here for the string section, particularly the live recorded strings, is I have a little soft drive. Let's just hear how the string sounds right now. And now I'm going to bypass it. Hear how you're really missing that high end? But now you might be thinking, oh, it sounds really brittle, or maybe you might say plasticky. Yes, that's actually intentional, because if you're blending it with the program strings, this is how it sounds. You have this definition from the live strings that you're not getting from the sequence string. And now I'm going to bypass it. Suddenly, that's gone. And now it's back. The definition is back. And it's gone again. So again, while in solo, you're kind of thinking that the string sounds plasticky, in context, it actually adds a lot of realism to the sequence strings. Now, moving on to the brass, we also have the same plugin, Polydactyl, and I'm also driving the high end, but this time I'm also driving the low end. Let's see if you can hear the difference. I would recommend headphones or big speakers because we're going to hear a lot of low end in this one. Going to bypass the low end. And now with. Suddenly you have like this really massive sound. And that's by basically driving the heck out of the low end. And I think it gives the brass so much more command. Now let's hear it in context. Now let's hear it bypass. You're kind of missing that bigger sound, that bite from the brass section, right? And I think the biggest change happens when I solo the brass and also the vocals, particularly in this part. Let's play it bypass for now. And now with the effect. I think the horns just soar now and really complementing, bringing more power for Adriana, our vocalist over here. So now we're moving on to the next section, which is the percussion. And here we have another noise engineering plugin, the Librae. And this is what we call the mid-side processing. In a stereo field, you have mid-side information, meaning that you can separate this information that's in the phantom center, which is the mid, and the information that are in the sides, the left side and the right side. And what's interesting about percussion, especially since I use an orchestral library percussion, is the instruments are usually in the very back of the hall, meaning that while the sound disperses and becomes big, you kind of lack that localization where you can feel like the sound is surrounding you left and right. And this is where this plugin really shines. Because what I did in the side signal, meaning the information on the side, I did a soft drive and saturate. Now let's just hear it with the plug-in bypassed. Now with the plug-in on, do you feel like you're more enveloped in the sound, like you're more in the middle of the action, like the cymbal swells is kind of like surrounding you more. And I think that's exactly the type of percussion sound that I want to get from this type of cue. You might also notice that there is some sort of distortion happening. And that's going in the pre-stage, meaning before any of the processing, I applied a few effects. One of it is zero pop. So if I turn this up like 50%, you probably hear this a lot in EDM production. So zero processing distortion is something that's really relevant in the electronic music production world. A lot of percussion are designed from this sort of distortion effect. And what I did is I just used just a tiny smidge because it makes the percussion pop more. It makes it more powerful, and it has that grit. It has that texture to it, which I think really supports that building up moment. Let's just hear it in context with the plugin. And now let's listen to it bypassed. You feel how far the percussion has become. Like it's not part of the action. You're not part of the action, but it feels like so far away. And I think Librae just brings the percussion closer to you, bringing you in the middle of the action. And I think that's really cool. So now into the final stretch, I have Ruina, which, as the name suggests, ruins any sound. And I have this in the very final moments, and I automate the blend because you're going to hear it when I crank it up to 11, what will happen to the signal. Let's just hear it in context right now. And that's me cranking the blend to 14%. Let's just try 45 perhaps. So yeah, I think in this context specifically, it's better to use this plugin in moderation. Now let's just hear the final stretch with the plugin's bypass. I think it's still really cool, but again, I don't think it has the same effect when I have the Ruina plugin active. It's so good. Anyhow, thanks for watching this video. That's my cue breakdown for this cue, Sacrifice. I hope you enjoy it and you learn a thing or two. Happy making music, everybody. Bye.